Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Secret Sunday session. Today I'm joined by Jen Muir from Connected Parenting. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's great to have you on to start this conversation today, which we are moving into parenting. It is a hot topic at the moment, and I feel like it's been in the media for quite a bit now in terms of are
Yeah.
we parenting kids the way that we should be, and who are we to blame? We all, I think, want to point the finger. So I'm really interested to dive into this conversation today. But before we jump in, for those viewers that are not aware of who you are and what you do with yourself, who is Jen Muir and what does she do?
Okay, so I'm a social worker and parent educator. I'm an author of a book called Little People, Big Feelings. I have a podcast called Beyond the Chaos. I'm the founder of Connected Parenting, which is really about supporting parents with emotions, connection, tricky behavior. Big feelings are my passion. I'm a van driving mum of four boys, and I also have a giant dog. So that is me.
I love it. Hectic, busy, sounds like you've got it all going on for you. And then to add it in, you said as well, you have this passion to really help families and households in terms of parenting, which, as we mentioned, is such a big thing at the moment. And I want to touch on that because I think we know how trends come about. But why do you believe right now we are seeing parenting be at the forefront of mass media, the forefront of conversations within communities? Why has it become this next hot topic?
Modern parents are parenting differently. So, a couple of big reasons, but the village has changed. So, we are living and working differently. The village has changed in terms of so many things. How we like so many, all you have to do is look at a 90s movie to know the world has changed, right? So, we're much more aware of emotions. We're much more aware that we're sort of living and working differently, is number one. And number two, because of this, there is kind of a whole lot of new information around the way that we might parent, around what's good for kids, what's not good for kids. In so many areas, we now know that talking in certain ways in front of kids, around every topic, as and you would know around the way we talk about food or eating, for example. We've learned so much about the ways that we can talk more positively about that. So we've got more information. And I always say, parents, from the minute they have that very first baby, they've got more information about that baby from the very first ultrasound scan in 3D than we've ever had in the context of modern parenting. And that's just the beginning of an avalanche of information. So we know more about what kids need. The village has changed. And as a result, parents are parenting differently. So whenever parents parent differently, that's going to stir up some emotions, from people who maybe didn't parent in that way. It's going to look different. Kids are going to behave different. You might find that kids look less grateful or they're having big meltdowns. And we go, well, in my day, people
Mhm.
didn't behave like that because they would have got a smack bottom.
Mm.
But we're sort of parenting differently. We're doing things differently. We're talking about things differently. We're trying to let kids express their emotions. And all of this has parenting, I think, on a bit more of a front foot because parents are desperately seeking the information. So because they're seeking it, more of it's being produced. And so there are more parenting books than ever. When I had my first child 15 years ago, there was about three parenting books on the market. There was
Wow.
no social media. And the difference that I've seen just in that period that I've been parenting is really, really profound. So I think that they're just some of the factors that I think are contributing to
Mm.
that different context of which we're parenting in.
It's really interesting you mentioned there in terms of we're allowing our kids to express more, which is such an encouraging conversation because as we've mentioned, like in generations before, we haven't created that space for young people. But then there is that counter argument that we're allowing them to express so much that there is that conversation of a lack of discipline in the family household. Do you see this playing out and is it a positive or negative thing?
I think we've got to separate out a lack of discipline to an ability to express emotions and feelings. And again, within the context of how we were parented. So I'm a child of the 80s. If I did the wrong thing, I got a smack bottom, I got sent to my room.
Mm.
And yet I'm trying to parent my children in a way that's different. I'm trying to sort of set boundaries in a way that's firm and kind and welcome their feelings. So it's kind of separating out. So if we give our kids absolutely everything they want and never say no, then that might lead to a lack of gratitude or to some things that are less positive. Whereas if we're still, children still need boundaries, and they definitely need us to set a lot of boundaries as they grow up. So if we're still, we can still set boundaries, but we can do it in a way that's kind, is essentially what this is about. So it's absolutely still holding beautiful limits that keep kids safe and that protect our well-being and our self-care, that protect siblings, that kind of all of those limits still matter. And it's really important that parents are empowered with the skills to say no. It's just that we're trying to avoid some of the kind of more punitive discipline practices of the past, which we've really conclusively seen through neuroscience and 70 years of evidence that just wasn't the best outcome for kids. And actually, just if I could tell a really quick story, because a
Mm.
dad I worked with once articulated this really well. He said to me, so he was working with me and he'd worked really hard on his parenting and he was raising three little girls. And he said, you know what? I've this whole welcoming feelings and like sitting with emotions and allowing my kids to express their feelings rather than punishing them for them. He goes, I get it. And not only do I get it, but I've seen how it works. Like if a child's crying because their sister got more blueberries than them, and you say, I get it, this feels frustrating. You don't have to necessarily get them more blueberries, but you welcome that feeling, and instantly kids feel better when they feel seen. And he goes, it works. Like it works. It makes my house more peaceful. There's less meltdowns because I'm welcoming feelings. So I get it. And he said, my one question is this. I feel like my kids are kind of less respectful. They have less discipline than I would have had. And he said, my dad, he would have hit first, asked questions second. This is how I was raised. And I would have never disrespected my dad in the way that my girls are disrespecting me. And he goes, what do you think of that? And I was like, that's a really good question. And I think it's sort of what you were just saying. And so I chatted with this beautiful dad who was doing such a great job. And I said, well, what the evidence shows is that while you might be able to teach compliance or, we can teach kids not to sort of show emotion through that kind of old school discipline, we're not necessarily sort of helping them learn how to process their emotions, number one. And the impact this has longer term is like less good impacts for mental health is one issue. But probably the bigger issue for most parents is that child is less likely to call you at 16 when they've got a problem. And that child is less likely to call you at 45 when they've got a problem. It's going to impact your relationship. And this dad paused and he sort of took a really deep sort of breath and he said, wow. And he goes, because I consider my dad like my best friend. I consider my dad my mate. We hang out all the time. But he said, when I was 16, he would have been the last person on my list to go to if I had a problem, if I was struggling, if I had a need. I would never have called him. And he said, you know what? I am 45, and he would be the last person on my list if I genuinely was in emotional struggle. I would not go to my dad.
Wow.
And that's when the
The
penny
penny
dropped for
dropped.
him. And I think it's a good way of explaining what we're really talking about here. We can get compliance, but it's not necessarily what we think it is.
Mm. It's really interesting, bringing up that in terms of it's almost you're doing the work now for the future, for,
Yeah.
for, for building that relationship with your kids in the future. And not only for your relationship, but for them, as you mentioned, so that they can grow up and know how to communicate and how to express instead of suppress their emotions.
That's right. Yeah.
It's parenting is, I think, a really difficult thing, and I'm coming from a place of obviously naivety because I don't have kids myself, but it is something that I feel a lot of parents can get stuck in with, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? If I say this, am I going to like affect the kid 20 years down the track? And we're living in households that are also changing and they are different.
Mm.
How does a working mum, a working dad that are now both going to work, don't have the time, have their own stresses, supposed to set boundaries and really parent and turn up for their child in an environment that doesn't encourage them to be present parents?
I think if we can hone in on what kids really need, there are many ways to raise connected, attached children that feel seen, safe, heard, and loved. And in the modern village where there's more economic pressure than ever, we may both have to work. Now, the good news about the needs of children, it's not 24/7 what they need from us. It's quality over quantity. It's authentic over perfect every single day of the week.
Mm.
So, what I want parents to know is this: children simply need the exact same three things that all human beings need. They need to know that they are loved, and we do that through connection. And you can connect with your kid through a high five, through lighting up as they enter a room, through taking 2 minutes to show an interest in what they're interested in. They need to know that they're safe. And we do this through setting and holding boundaries in a way that is firm but also kind. So I hear you. You really want the biscuit. My answer is no, but I can totally understand that that's hard. And we do this by being okay with their emotions. So basically, the third need is, am I seen and heard? And we don't have to do this all the time, but if just 30% of the time we can allow our kids to express their feelings without trying to change it, we make this significant difference. And those three things, am I loved? Am I safe? Am I seen and heard? We really do through the daily grind of our day. So if you've got a very young child who's getting in or out of the bath, all of those things would happen, right? We can connect before we direct. We can say, you do have to get into the bath. I know it's hard. And then as our child cries, we go, we welcome that emotion. And so much of that is just happening in the grind. And same with, our teenagers, I have a 15-year-old, and when he was in about year 7, he came to me and he said, every single kid at my school has TikTok except me. Like, I am the only kid without TikTok. Now, I'm a parent educator, so I have my reasons that TikTok was not on my agenda for my child at 12.
Mm.
But I can't jump straight to that and meet his needs. Now, I don't have to do that every time, but this felt really significant for him. So authentically, I stopped. I was sort of cooking dinner, had 4 kids underfoot, dog underfoot, and here he is, so upset. Every kid has TikTok, even the principal's kid has TikTok. And I stopped and I said, so first of all, wow, everyone has TikTok except you. Gosh, that must suck. And
Mm.
I said, if I was your age and every kid had something like that and I didn't have it, I would have been so annoyed at my mum. Like, I would have hated her. Like, I can get if you'd be so pissed off at me right now.
Mm.
And then I said, so that's the empathy, the connection. I hear you, I see you. And then I said, hey, so my position on TikTok remains. There are aspects of it that just do not feel safe for me, for where you're at, and my job is to keep you safe. But I'm not expecting him to go, oh, well, sure, I'll just, I'm like, but I get it. It sucks. Like, I would totally hate that if I was your age. It's not the end of the conversation. I need to finish cooking dinner, but I'm going to come into your room later and maybe we can chat about what it is about TikTok that you're really wanting. He never asked again. To be honest, he moved on to the next app that he wanted. Like, I think it was Snapchat. But like, I guess my point is this stuff that we're doing, it just happens in the grind. It's about the willingness to stop and just welcome that emotion, hear it from our child's perspective, hold that boundary, and easier said than done because there's so much sort of going on for us in those moments. But I always like parents to know if we can just do that 30% of the time, the difference for our kids is really significant.
Mm. How does a parent control their emotions? Say, even for that example, when your child comes to you and, might mention it for the 50th time again that, oh my gosh, I don't have TikTok as well. And then you, as a parent, I could see, could get quite angry or upset or just snap. How do you, in that moment, take a breath and hold back and know to, deliver it in a way that is not going to cause a riff or a reaction within the household?
Yeah, look, I don't always, and no one does it perfectly. So I just want to be really clear, I don't always. And sometimes I snap and I cause a riff, and that's what we do. And if we do that, we repair. So just knowing that kids don't need perfect parents, but they do need parents that are willing to go back and get that relationship back on track, particularly as we're meant to be the adult. So their job is to arc up and struggle. Our job is to, where possible, stay regulated when our child is not.
Mm.
But easier said than done. How do I practically do it? Couple of tips. Number one, I try to just regulate my own breathing. So rather than telling my child to calm down, I just try to, whoa, I'm feeling really heightened. I'm going to try to calm down. because no one in the history of being told to calm down has ever calmed down. So I just try to, I'm feeling heightened, and sort of trying to control that myself. Sometimes with my kids when they're younger or they're really worked up, I try to get closer to them. So just by physically getting closer to your child, especially if they're younger, just putting your hand on them, suddenly you can see that they're little, and suddenly a lot of that kind of our own automatic pilot will settle. So that can help as well. Sometimes I will just try to model the kind of openness on my face. So just by softening my face and opening my palms like this, because kids take in like 2 in 10 of your words when they're dysregulated. And so if I can go, yeah, I can see this is really tough, rather than, you know, I can see this is tough, but my answer's no. Instantly they're seeing a bit more of that openness, and often it flows through me. So they're the little things I do. The other thing I sometimes say is like, this is a good kid having a hard time, or I try to grab that reflex of jumping into fight, flight, or freeze myself and keep myself present and grounded. And I don't always succeed. So no one does. But where we can grab that and kind of go, hang on, my only job is to kind of not lose it. And kids will not hear us until we hear them. So it's really trying to hear them first before we get to our reasoning and our logic.
I think it's a great perspective to grab. We know that not every kid is the same.
Mm.
How can parents in a situation like your own understand how to parent almost differently, or is it the same for each child? Like, how do you meet each child's needs knowing that they're different and they're all going to be required at different times, while sometimes you might not have the capacity as well?
I think the single biggest thing parents can do to learn this, like, first of all, with a lot of compassion, because it's a really hard thing to do, especially if that was not modeled for you. And we think that modern parents might think that if they berate themselves and say, "Oh, I mucked it up today, I yelled at my kid, I wasn't the parent I wanted to be, I'm totally crap at this." We often do that because we think that will make us a better parent. We think that if we're negative to ourselves, it will make us better. The single biggest thing we could do that would help us be better parents, if I could strip it right back, is self-compassion. If you can offer yourself compassion in the struggle, either in the moment or afterwards when you've gotten it all wrong, and say, oh, this is really tough, but I'm a really good parent, I'm doing the best that I can. That self-compassion will not only lower your cortisol and have you less likely to go into fight, flight, or freeze and not be the parent you want to be, but that self-compassion will extend. And so is my child. They're a really good kid. They're doing the best they can. And that's the truth of it. We are all really good parents doing the best we can. I have never met a parent that isn't doing the best that they can. And I've equally never met a child that isn't doing the best they can. We're all trying to do the best they can. Kids go well when they can. Parents go well when they can, but we go better if we're kinder to ourselves. And that self-compassion starts with just not talking negatively and kind of going, this is hard. And that helps you in the moment as well. It stops you from flipping because you're like, oh, it's really hard. My child's being really defiant. I want to scream, go to your room. I hate this. I can go with my automatic programming, or I can be what my child needs. I can kind of be what my child needs in this moment, or be who I wished I had in this moment when I was like this, or whatever it is that helps you. But that compassion is the kind of start point. And that compassion will also help you do things like, what the evidence shows is the single biggest thing we can do, particularly if we do have multiple children, and particularly if there is a child with needs or who's struggling with, anything from mental health to neurodivergence or anything that can happen in our households. That is really hard yakka for parents. And, compassion is really essential because that is hard. But also, I think finding something that you have that's for you, that is fun, and setting boundaries around protecting your self-care as well as being the parent you want to be. These two things are single-handedly going to help you be a better parent than any book you could read on like what kids need exactly, or getting the wording or the scripting right around how to name feelings. Compassion for you will flow to beautiful, authentic compassion for your child.
It sounds so beautiful and so bliss to come from a place of, as you said, compassion and kindness for yourself as well as for your child. And we're obviously talking a lot about a parent, but in some relationships or family households, there are two parents. And do you believe that it's important for those two parents to be on the same page in terms of the way that they parent children, or should they both understand their roles in order it actually being different in terms of sometimes we hear this good cop bad cop mentality play out. Is there relevance for that in a family household for kids, or should both parents be on the same page?
Yes and no. In that, it can be really helpful if two parents can agree on some core rules in a household. Core rules are really basic, stripped right down. So no hitting and hurting ourselves or each other, no damage to our stuff, our property. When someone is hurt or crying, we check on them. So that would be three core rules that apply in my house. And if my children are breaking one of those rules, I am always stepping in to help them, always with the same response, because that consistency, particularly from little kids up around that response, always being the same from both parents, is really, really helpful for kids to sort of learn those core rules. Outside of that, we're allowed to be really different. And the thing I would want parents to know is that kids only need one parent that's meeting all their emotional needs in the way that sort of I talk about, making sure that they're feeling loved and safe and seen and heard. They only need one primary caregiver that meets those needs. All a child needs in this whole world is just one person that believes in them inside and out and can meet those needs. They don't need two. So for anyone out there that has a partner that just is parenting in a way that just doesn't fit with what you're learning or doing, just know that that's okay. But the second thing I'd say is that 96% of couples have a different boundary style or an emotional style. And the way that I like to explain it, it's a bit like a seesaw, but some of us are very good at being firm. We're good at leading. We're good at because I said so, and I'm good at taking charge when needed. But often, if you're good at firm, sometimes under pressure, you can lose your kindness and your compassion. Now, firm without kind can come across as mean, and mean never gets a great result from kids, right?
Mm.
And then we've got the other half of us, we're on the kind side, we're very good at compassion and empathy and understanding where our kids are coming from, creativity in the moment. Sometimes under pressure, we lose our ability to set a limit. So we lose our firm. We've got our kind, but we lose our firm. Now, kind without firm can be weak. Now, the problem with mean or weak is that that can make kids feel unsafe and it can have them pushing against limits a little bit harder. But what I want all parents to know is that 96% of couples, we have a firm partner up with a kind, or they develop that way. But that's how it always works. The good thing about that is statistically the best outcome for kids. When they have one parent that is on the compassionate side, one parent that's on that firmer side, that is a good outcome. When we have both parents on one side, that can be really tricky because the child is sort of not getting that other kind of set of needs met. It's quite rare though. It's like 4% of couples is how
Mm.
that will work. I've only worked with like a couple in my time, and it can be harder. So once parents know, hey, I'm doing some good things, I just need to work on this. And I'm doing some good things. I just need to work on this. We can go from you need to be more kind and you need to be more firm to like, wow, look at what we're both bringing to this. How can we learn from each other? How can we tap, each other in? Like if I'm really terrible at the no, I might tap out of a really tricky boundary situation and send my partner in because like, I don't think I've got this in me today. Can you do this?
Mm.
And equally, we can learn from each other and start to work better as a partnership. So we definitely don't have to partner the same. But I always say to parents, if you kind of can identify where you sit when you go to those tricky moments, is finding that bit and bringing that up. So I actually sit on the firm side. I want to say, because I said so, I'm counted three, that's what's in me.
Yeah.
And I have to actively find that compassion. My husband, so it's not gendered, he's on the kind side. He is endlessly compassionate, patient. He's the most patient man on the face of the earth, but struggles to just say no. And so it's kind of finding that bit that you need and bringing that up.
Mm. Can parents tiptoe in and out of both sort of categories in different
Mhm.
situations?
Yeah, and many people will find they're kind, 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 and then they snap and go mean, or other people are like you. So absolutely, people can say, "Oh, I relate to a little bit of both of that." But generally, you might find under pressure. you sit often a little bit swayed or you slip one side or the other. And having that sense that we're just trying to bring up that other side and that all parents struggle with this, I think is helpful.
Mm. Is there a certain point during, say, when you are parenting that you are to have this conversation with your partner? Like, I wouldn't imagine you would have this, in the first couple of years of your child being born. Is there a certain stage in terms of, them heading into primary school or to high school? Like, when is that transition when you need to probably sit down with your partner and say, okay, how are we going to do this?
Ideally, to be honest, around the time your first child is two is probably a good time to start talking about it because that's when you first come up against it as a parent. And that's because I work with lots of parents one-on-one and I find that what happens is, your child pushes someone, over in the park and one of you is like, oh, well, that's okay. He's just learning. And the other one is like, no, we need to sit him in the corner because that is not okay. And suddenly you're butting heads over that very simple behavior. And we're not even into the complex teen years yet. But if we can start talking about it in the early years when kids are meant to sort of push and bubble up with lots of emotions, at least we've got some structure and we've had some practice. Because I always say, setting and holding limits with a 3-year-old is sort of one thing, but then when you're holding them around your 15-year-old who wants to go to that party and whatever else is a whole other thing. The meltdowns might look different, but they're still happening. And so having built those skills up and strengthened your ability to sort of stay regulated through these moments can be helpful. So the earlier the better, but it is never, ever too late to change your relationship with your child or with emotions or how you set boundaries. If you kind of look at something and ultimately go, this isn't working for me or my child, we've always got that opportunity for a reset, and it's never too old. It's never too old, even after your children have left home. It's not too old to turn up and go, hey, I've been thinking about the way we go together and I want to do this a bit differently. And I'm sorry about some of the ways I've done that. And I want to know what works for you, or I've thought about the way that our boundaries are going around this and I want to do it differently. So it's never too late.
Mm. Do you think social media has had a drastic impact on the way that we are parenting and the way that parents perceive themselves?
Yeah, look, I guess it has. It's brought short form content around the how. So when I was learning how to do a lot of this stuff, I learned by doing Circle of Security, which is an 8-week parenting course that I attended live in a community centre. Um, I had to sort of read books, and I find the parents I'm working with now who are younger than me, these are sort of millennial parents or younger and they want short form content, delivered in 90 seconds. And so we are delivering this stuff faster and quicker, which is a good thing, except if parents think that everything they digest applies to them or their child, or if they think that everything they digest must be applied 100% of the time. Because what matters so much more than getting the words right or kind of nailing the new scripts around parenting is authentically trying to see our child and hear them.
Mm.
And that's the bit that we'll lose if we're too caught up, in our heads, sort of following a script.
Mm. Yeah, it is. It's quite interesting with, as we mentioned, parenting being this hot topic where you see everybody now all of a sudden is a parenting guru
Yeah.
and shares this perfect world of how you should parent your child and what is good and what is bad. And it can be quite overwhelming for a parent to know, okay, well, am I parenting my child wrong? Or, am I going to mess them up? And I hear this a lot in terms of even the work that we do is I feel like I have screwed up my child and this is because of me. And that lack of compassion in an environment where social media kind of encourages you to live a perfect life. And I can
Yeah. And
imagine the stress.
I feel that as a parent, and it's something I keep very kind of in mind as an educator. Anytime I go to post something on social media, I always sort of think it might be true, but is this going to be helpful? So it's always a filter I put this through because, we can put out a post that gets a lot of clicks and likes, but it makes parents feel like shit. And if
Mm.
something makes parents feel like shit, they're not going to go better. So there is some stuff out there that I think is not helpful because it's coming from a place of making parents feel shame.
Mm.
And I really relate to that as a parent as well, because I know as I'm an educator that has put out reels saying, making kids say please doesn't foster gratitude, for example. And then I'm in a public situation and someone gives my child a gift and I'm like, say please, or say thank you. And then I'm like, oh, that's not the right thing to do. Ah. So I try to sort of deliver a message for parents that I work with about just that authenticness, and I try to be very real and sort of, because I'm in it, I try to show that we can do a little bit better at letting our kids know that their feelings are healthy and okay than the generations before, without coming at it from a place of shame towards our parents, shame towards ourselves, or shame towards our kids.
Mm.
So when we're in a place of shame, we just don't go better. None of us do. So it's really trying to take what feels helpful and what works, um and it genuinely does. Like, can I tell another story?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So this is a story that I think articulates what I'm trying to sort of get across better than anything else. Um, my 2-year-old was in my kitchen. I just had my fourth son. I had my fourth son in a baby carrier. I was cooking dinner. My 2-year-old wanted a banana. I said, yeah, sure. And in the process of handing him this banana and peeling it, I broke it in half. Now, anyone that's had a 2-year-old before would know that the 2-year-old now will no longer want that banana. So he's like, banana broken, no banana, new banana. And I didn't have any more bananas. Now, everything I was taught growing up around emotions was like, we just need to shut this down and stop it. So at 2, if I'd have melted down over a banana, I probably would have been sent to my room. And most kids were, right? They were put on the naughty step. We don't carry on like that over a banana. You sit on the step. Now, the problem with that is the way that we develop the way we feel about feelings is that, oh, I don't show that, I push that down. So when my son started crying about his banana, and I was 10 days postpartum, I'm tired. And even though I'm a parent educator, every bone in my body was like, I need to shut this down. So I was like, I'll put it in a bowl. I'll give you a spoon. He's like, no, like new banana. And so I'm trying logic. I'm like, look in the bowl. I don't have any new bananas. Like, I've only got apples. He's like, no. He's kicking and screaming. I was offering alternatives like rice wheels. I was bribing him. How about the iPad? I'll make you feel better. He's losing his mind. And all the while, what's happening within me, and any parent who hears this story will relate to it, what I could feel was anger rising. I wanted to scream, go to your room, to my 2-year-old, desperately, really wanted to scream that.
Mm.
And what I was able to do was catch that thought, and it was a Brené Brownism that saved me. And it was like, you don't need to fix this, you just need to let him know you get it. So I paused. I sat down on the floor next to my little 2-year-old, and I only said 3 things. And all I said was what happened. I said, your banana broke. You really, really didn't want it to break, and you're very sad about this. Within 6 seconds, his head was leaning against my shoulder. Within 7 seconds, he was eating the banana. And I'm sitting there on the kitchen floor, and 2 massive realizations happened on the floor. One was like, my gosh, this stuff is hard to do because it wasn't modeled for me. So it's really, really hard to do. But 2, my gosh, it works so well.
Yeah.
One of the things I say to parents when they're sort of wondering, is this worth it or whatever, it's like, just try it. And it works so well and it feels so much better. I spent 7 minutes trying to stop my son from feeling his feelings, which made it worse. And it felt terrible. I spent about 3 seconds accepting his feelings. I
Mm.
didn't give him another banana. I didn't have one to give. But 3 seconds letting him know I got it. So that is kind of why I do what I do, is I see it. And I say to parents, if it's feeling hard and it's feeling like it's not working, it's probably not. You know your kid better than anyone. But when we strip it right back to those core needs, like if we can let a child know that they are loved and that they are safe and that they are seen and heard, everything goes better.
Mm.
And yeah, so that's why I do what I do, because it works.
Mm.
And yet I also do what I do because I have to work at it and I find it so hard. So I think it's like holding both of those things is sort of the way.
Do you find you ever are able to let go of that conditioning? I mean, you saying you growing up in a completely different environment, and I would imagine hopefully it does get easier, but is there still that conditioning even for you today when things come up? Like, does it ever actually go away for
Mm.
you to be able to switch it off?
I don't know that it ever goes away. It would be great if we could just work at something and we'd be different. It gets easier to catch. I find it's much easier to catch. I don't always catch it, but that moment of catching, that I just need to let him know I get it. What I say to parents is that often I catch it because whatever I'm doing hasn't worked. So we're often in autopilot. We can't help that. So we just say, up you get, dust it off, you're fine, whatever.
Mm,
And our child says, no, I'm not fine.
mm, mm,
And we go, "Ugh, that isn't working. Something has to shift here." And suddenly you find that kind of gear shift out of automatic pilot and into what your child needs. You don't have to catch that every time, but that's what I find gets a little bit easier with practice. But certainly the things that particularly you weren't able to show in your family of origin growing up will be harder for you. And so being really compassionate about that. I find most mums struggle with whinging and whining. That will really trigger them in terms of behaviors that have them really kind of exploding.
mm,
And many dads struggle with defiance. And actually, both of those things are just the expression of frustration in kids. It's just dysregulation and it's how they express it. But when we explore, well, why do women feel so triggered by whinging? Because we were told turn that frown upside down, girls don't behave like that, settle down, calm down. Why do men get so triggered by defiance? That kind of that real, you know, I'm not doing it.
testing ego, yeah.
Testing ego, because they would have been probably smacked and sent to their room for that behavior. We both learned the expression of that emotion was not safe. So now, when our children show it, something within us is going, this isn't safe. We need to shut this down. And that's what takes over. And then we're in fight, flight, or freeze, just like our kids are. So our only goal is not to get it perfect, but to try and catch that flip and just go, okay, I can go with that automatic programming and kind of snap or retreat or kind of, ignore, or what does my child need right now? And it's always like the banana. You're really upset because your banana broke is truly what it's always about.
Mm,
It's about the banana and it's not about the banana, because truly it wasn't about the banana for my son. He was 2 and I just had a second child, and he was processing the fact that I just went to hospital for 5 days, and he's also got to deal with everything else that happens in a 2-year-old's day. And when that banana broke, it was the last straw. So it's not actually about the banana, but it is.
yeah. It's incredible how in detail and like depth it is. And even when you speak of that, it's not just about the child or the kid. Most of the time it's the parent, the parent as well as being triggered and brought up based on the way that they have grown. I think it's so fascinating, and it's obviously still ever evolving. We don't know where this conversation is going to go even 5 years down the track.
Yep.
It's exciting, but it's also, I think, very scary for a lot of parents that may feel like they don't have that control as much. But I
Mm.
think this conversation has been amazing in order of bringing up these insightful topics and really bring practical tools. Like even for me, just sitting there and understanding the difference between like the defiance and the whinging, like straight away I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this is played out in my household. And now understanding that, I think is phenomenal. And it all comes back to, as you said, the way that you've been brought up and how that's then rippling into your life now. So thank you so much for sharing all this today and your incredible insights. I do want to end on a couple of things in terms of, we talked about feeling seen, heard, and loved from a child's perspective. But even in that sense, what do you think parents need when it comes to parenting?
I think they need the same 3 things. If you've had a really hard day with your kids and your partner comes home and you tell your partner about, oh my gosh, the kids, that was so terrible today. It was so hard. And if your partner tries to fix it or solve it or give you advice, you'll go, I just want you to listen. We want the exact same thing. We want a partner that comes in or a friend that says, ah, that sounds tough. Tell me more. Let me pour you a glass of wine. I hear you. It sounds like you've had a really tough day. So it's really the same thing like that we need,
Mm.
that our kids need.
Mm. Is there ever, just quickly adding to that, because I even know in my life, as you said, it's a basic human need. How do you almost help yourself in supporting that? Because sometimes we can have that then leads to expectations of, say, a partner coming home and wanting that from them, and may not it then being received in the way that you were wanting that, and then you feeling disappointed or upset or angry. How do you approach that situation in delivering, say, this is what I need from that person without expecting too much? Is it as simple as just telling them this is what I need from you?
Yeah, we can do the best we can with the partner that we have and what they're capable of. Because again, your partner's family of origin story around the expression of emotion might be quite limited or more limited than yours. And so your style is you want to express emotions. Their style is to fix it or to say, don't worry about it. Or so awareness of that. And again, starting with that compassion. Ah, this is hard for him. And then trying to, or her, trying to have a conversation outside of the moment. So, never in the moment. No one ever goes well in the moment, but maybe another time, side by side. Hey, I've been thinking about, when I've had a tough day with the kids and you come home, I want to sort of talk about what would be most helpful for me, for you to do, and trying to really be quite specific can help.
Amazing. And my last question before I let you off the hook. Final three tips for parents specifically that have parented a particular way, but now they're revisiting their approach in terms of wanting to add more compassion and kindness to the way that they approach parenting their kids from a style that, as you said, may not have started off that way. So, how are they to introduce that now? What would be your three things of where to start?
Number one, always start with connection. So connect before you direct. Even just touching your child on the shoulder before you say time to brush your teeth is going to make a significant difference. Always, always, always. And we get nowhere without the connection. Number two, compassion for yourself and for your child will be the single biggest thing you could do that could help you be more the parent you want to be in the moment. And number three, kids don't need perfect parents, but they do need parents that repair when it's gone off track. Repair is not about saying, I'm sorry, but if only you had listened. It's about, hey, that didn't go the way I hoped, or I acted more like a toddler than my toddler, or whatever it is. And I really care about getting this back on track, and I'm here to make it right.
Beautiful. I love it. Three simple things that we can just try to chip away at. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been absolutely amazing to have this conversation, especially in the environment that we're in. Where can people find you if they want to connect, grab a hold of your book, or even get some coaching?
Yes, so my website is connectedparenting.com.au. I offer one-on-ones and workshops, and you can find everything there and join my mailing list. Instagram is at connectedparentingau, and that's probably my closest community, but I'm also on TikTok and on Facebook. And my book is Little People, Big Feelings, and you can get that anywhere you buy a book, but it is cheapest on Amazon or Big W.
Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you as well to all of our listeners out there for tuning in for another episode of the Secret Sunday Session. It has been amazing speaking to Jen Muir about all things parenting and the way that we can really support our children in the modern era.
Thank you so much.
No worries. We will catch you guys all next time.